season 2 of this year, I guess. Meanwhile, we have our next match coming up. It's going to be RDU versus Casie. RDU going to have his debut on stream this season of Grandmasters, as he didn't have the best results in the first 3 weeks of Swiss.
Yeah, and before we move on completely, just a final happy birthday for Tice, even though he didn't quite get the result that he would have wanted, of course. But yeah, RDU versus Casie, pretty interesting one, because I think, Casie is starting to feel slightly frustrated with how his season is going as well up until this point. We've seen a couple of tweets. I've seen a couple of tweets that were then hastily deleted as well. That were talking about his experiences so far in GM. He's a very emotional roller coaster kind of guy. Like generally, in the light of day, and when he's had time to consider and think things over, he's very considered and genuinely quite positive in his outlook on things. But spur of the moment, he can be a very, very salty, angry person. So I think that emotional roller coaster is really getting to him as his season is not quite going the way he would have wanted it to. But of course, we've seen all that from RDU as well. Just really not having a good record through Swiss up until this. Feels like a lot of things have gone against him up until this point as well. But, insists that he is well in control of where he needs to be with the constructive metagame. Feels like he understands it very, very well. I actually had a private conversation with him where he admitted that, there were metagames that he just skipped entirely, and he played, a Masters tour and didn't really feel like he was in control of the metagame whatsoever. Right. But he doesn't feel like that right now. He feels like he is on top of everything that he needs to be on top of, and he will tell you that he has just been on an unlucky streak so far.
Yeah, and although this happens, right, you can't just win everything unless maybe your name's Hunter Ace, but this does happen, right? You do have off periods, no matter how much you play, no matter how much you try, and you try as hard as possible. But the problem is having an unlucky streak or just having one of those days is very shortly not becoming good enough, right? Because if this continues, then RDU is going to be relegated, and any of the players, same could be said of Casie, Tice, anyone in Division B. Has that reasonably likely chance of being relegated if off days continue to happen week after week. So although it can happen to anyone, now's not the time. Now's the time they need to really turn up the heat here. We do see both Demon Hunters banned out, and it is going to be Mage, Rogue, Warrior versus Mage, Rogue, Warrior. So a mirrored lineup, at least in terms of classes, and I imagine a fairly closely mirrored lineup in terms of archetypes as well, Sotto.
Yeah, I do believe, as mentioned, that RDU is playing almost exactly, if not exactly, what Tice is playing. Does have that one copy of Consume Magic in his in his Demon Hunter, which is kind of a big giveaway that they, two teammates have got such a unique tech together. So I imagine the rest of their lists are almost identical, which I'm just sort of trying to eyeball right now as I'm talking. But you can see the rest of his list there: Highlander Mage, Galakron Rogue, and Tempo Warrior. Still on the Terran train, though, it seems, in his Tempo Warrior, which is a card that is starting to just phase away a little bit, I would say, in the Warrior build.
Yeah, it's one of the cards that at least next weekend, I'll be more surprised if we don't see it. I think with when the players have to submit their lists, I think the more of the definite decision that Terran's not good enough has really kicked in this specific weekend. So although they have to submit obviously a few days ago, I think next week's going to be the true test of any players that are still choosing to put Terran in the lineup. But as you can see, you'll see there Casie on the Galakron Rogue, Tempo Warrior, and Highlander Mage. So it's going to be mirrored, as we said. It's going to be a tough one, I think, for these players. As you said, we saw Casie yesterday get quite frustrated on camera at the outcome of his series and some of the moments in game.
But we know rightly so.
Yeah. I'm not saying any of this is unjustified. I'm saying this is just factual statements at this point. Mm-hmm. But also, we know RDU gets it. He's one of the most passionate Hearthstone players we've ever had, actually. So for these players' sake, I hope the frustrations or even just how much they're into it right now does not affect the play, which is the key thing. You can be passionate, you can get angry, you can get tilted, but if it starts affecting your actual play in game, that's when you start being the real loser in that scenario, right?
Yeah, it's one of the most reductive pieces of nonsense that you'll ever see from onlookers who have never been there and never done it. That showing emotion and tilting are the same thing, and they're just absolutely not. There's an extra step in there that needs to be qualified before you're actually tilting, and that is that you are letting your emotions then guide your play. As long as you can keep those two things separate, you can be as emotional as you want, and that is generally a skill that some people do possess.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the game's actually started or not yet. Okay, no,
Practice
it's not.
game.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I was just making sure, just because it sounded like it went on for a few turns or not. But yeah, the players just about are getting ready, so we'll be getting into this series very, very quickly. But yeah, I do agree. There is a difference, and maybe we've been, maybe in the past it's been talked about a bit too much in that if players look tilted but are not, but the real factor is just in the play. So no matter what you think of what a player's doing on camera, look at what they're doing in the game, and that is the judgment of whether it's affecting them or not. So it is important, though, because I do feel as well with where these two players are at the moment, maybe just in their own mental space, that there's a higher chance to maybe just let the tilt take control a little bit here. So we will see how it plays out as we enter game number 1 between RDU on the top on the Warrior and Casie rocking the Mage.
And there he is. The refined, handsome gentleman that is RDU there up the top, making his debut on stream for Hearthstone Grandmasters. We've had to wait a while. There he is, in all of his glory.
Here's the moment it needs to make count. RDU, one of the players this week that only plays one match, which is why his score is a 0-0 there, the round robin. But that does mean he can kick this week off in a fantastic fashion by just going 1-0 and chalking that up as a huge victory. Casie, on the other hand, recovering from a loss this past weekend already, definitely does not want to go 0-2.
And kicking things off with the Mage here. This is the deck that he was tweeting. Like, hey, check out how my practice is going against purple. And it's just, you know, the most ridiculous looking puzzle box you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the biggest tilt factor in Hearthstone right now. Might just be the Yogg box for Mage when it is cast, I suppose. So I guess that's the training point, right? That's the montage video. Once you can conquer the box in terms of the tilt, you can conquer anything. You've seen Prison Observer come down now. It's going to be nice to just set up some damage, especially if there's an expectation. There's a skipper turn coming as a setup. As although it doesn't do the nice amount of damage, which you could argue would be 3 against Warrior, it does enough to set up some more easier removals, especially with Reno in hand for Casie.
Yeah. It's also just a 4-5, which is pretty sweet. These large, chunky, Yeti-sized minions are kind of what you're in the business of against Warrior, because they find them fairly difficult to remove outside of Blood Boil Brutes. That's why you're seeing some lists now flirting around with Execute in the list as well.
You see a nice early Zephyrus here for Casie as well, which means that might just be the card that bridges the gap for him. Whether that's to a Dragon Caster, which is live, into Power of Creation, or into just a Reno to clean up the board.
Are you just going to hold for now, it looks like? Plenty of time here still, especially with that live wire Lance. Knows he's going to pick up cheap minions for the risky skipper turn, and then get a huge Battle Rage turn out later on, if these minions are cleared, which of course they are going to be. And with the Imprisoned Observer just waking up, he wants to wait until all of this nonsense is dealt with before he starts making his big Battle Rage board. Makes sense?
Yep, and with the help now with the Bone Wraith, it does not look like Zephyrus is going to be needed, especially with that Ice Barrier pickup as well going into turn 5. And to be fair, the Malygos being live, Casie looks like he's transitioning to the late game, or has the ability to transition to the late game very smoothly with his hand.
Maybe...
Bomb Wrangler draw opens up a Wrangler and Rampage turn if he wants to. He could go Livewire Lance instead. Yeah, looks like it's going to be the line. Casie already fairly comfortable, at least in terms of the board state, and now seeing that weapon, he is going to snap remove that thing. Instant Acidic Swampoos, deny as much weapon value here as possible. They're such big engines to this Warrior deck.
Yeah, and this is the scary bit if you're RDU here, because, or at least we can see, there's Reno, there's Dragon Caster into Power of Creation, there's Ice Barrier, there's Frost Nova. There's all of the tools Casie basically needs to win the game right now. And RDU makes something happen. Pretty impressive. Pretty quick.
Yeah, so he is going to go ahead and do just that. This checks the
Very
boxes
nice.
as fairly impressive. He did get given Evolve Lackey as his one-off Lackey, which I think is usually the most frustrating one in this deck because it just messes with your skipper turns, where a lot of the time, you know, you're using your Lackeys as those cheap engines. This might be the only time I don't advocate for the Argent Commander.
Same, and it hurts me to say so.
Doesn't look very good here, does it?
Nope. I was wondering actually whether, well, it's tough, right? Because on this board, I was wondering, because of the fear of maybe another Battle Rage or some buffs, or even the skipper just being alive, that maybe this activates very cheap Blood Boils. I wondered whether it was whether it was even this turn regardless, whether it was just a Reno and go turn, or whether the Argent Commanders, in a roundabout way, get to kill off the Armor Smith and the skipper and still have 2 health and kind of make Radu have another skipper to clear them off. I'm definitely not saying it was the pick, but I don't think it was the worst offering and the worst idea if Casie had gone for it.
No, I think it was the second best option that turn.
Agreed. It's just, you do leave your opponent with 3 damaged minions, one of which is an Armor Smith, one of which is a skipper, which is always a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I gotta move.
It's going to be the Blood Boil.
Them down nice and cheap, down to 2 now, I think. Yep.
Even the
And
Evolve
then,
as well.
Surprise, we Quest Shaman now. Rush minion into an 8.
This is your time. It is mine.
Although not having the, what would you call it, like bonus effects of cards, either Death Rattle, Taunt, and active ability, Murazon just being an 8/8 there is just enough, because RDU is very heavily threatening lethal right now. We can see Grom and Inner Rage in hand, which means he only needs 4 damage to stick and say no Ice Barrier. For him to just steal this game's definitely the wrong phrase, but to just suddenly take this game.
I think Casie might have already got himself in a mess here. I'm getting the impression that his plan was to double trade and then Reno, but that's 1 health off. Which means there's an 8-1. There's an 8-1 left alive at the end of the turn. Because there was problems whichever way you did it. You don't want to double trade your cans into the 8-8 and then Reno, because obviously you're generating a bunch of bombs from the Bomb Wrangler as you Reno. So then they're left with all those bombs on the board. So yeah, now he has to divert to this plan instead and look to deal with it on the follow-up.
Sorry, so close.
Yeah, close is the word. Casie has had no time to play this Ice Barrier so far.
The big deal here as well is, though, that with the Mana Saber, it does activate the Alexstrasza for Casie. So if RDU goes all in to a certain extent and just pushes tons of damage and hope the bombs get there, then Casie can just heal up if he needs to. I don't think RDU's going to do that, though. I think he, even if he just Korkron's face, that's just definitely not all in, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, actually, it is just lethal, isn't it? You just Grom, Inner Rage, and then you Inner Rage your bomb, and it hits face for 4.
Sure.
No?
I would get shot down, but I would suggest either you should just win the series if you won the game in that fashion right now.
Okay.
If he just makes that play and wins, I'd be like, you know what, RDU 3-0, okay.
As long as RDU doesn't try and Inner Rage his opponent's face, I think he'll be okay.
Oh! Imagine. So how do you... sorry, Casie probably has to trade the cans in first, because these bombs can kill them off.
Yep. Then he takes another trade with the Mana Saber, plays Ice Barrier, and he renos.
Could still just die.
We're gonna have some fun.
Why did the Mana Saber go into the Grom? It didn't need to, did it? There was an 8-4 on one side, an 8-4 on the other side, and then if he kills a 1-1, then there's 2 1-1s left. That's 10 health total, and you have an extra minion alive? Am I getting that wrong?
Would you have killed the bomb?
Would he have killed the bomb?
I mean,
He
did
would've
you want him
killed
to trade into a bomb?
No, he could have just traded into the lackey.
Oh,
and left the two bombs.
yeah. I was just worried that obviously if you make a trade before the Reno's down, then maybe that means the bomb just gets you more consistently. I'm not sure, honestly. That turn was a little bit weird, and I'll confess I was not paying attention to the Mana Saber trade.
Yeah, not sure either, but I...
Let's watch that one back later on.
Yeah, fair enough.
Regardless, though, even with this Ice Fire that is going to keep Casie alive for now, there is still Corcoran and an Inner Rage in hand, plus Lackey X. And RDU's got time to chip away as well. The only problem is Casie does have, as long as RDU doesn't go, like, beat this board, then Casie down Alexstrasza, so he's actually managed this in a very nice way.
Yeah, he can Alexstrasza, but RDU has played around that eventuality quite well by making the board extremely obnoxious to deal with if Casie doesn't spend any resources on dealing with it.
Polly, and then...
Yeah, Polly on the egg does let him trade the board down very nicely. He can then even play a Flame Ward alongside that, so that he'd be protected from charging Corcoran elites unless they get rampaged.
Does he not need the ping? Doesn't, right?
No.
He just loses a bit of damage to face, but RDU's on 41, so I don't think damage to face is a huge issue right now. Freeze face and let him have the 1-1 before. This does save some damage as well.
Yep, fine.
RDU needs 9. There is, what, 6? And he gets to draw a card. And if he draws Rampage, that would be game.
He doesn't get to draw a card until he already all-ins, though, right?
Yes, he has to commit first, yes.
Yeah.
And it has to be Rampage. Oh, sorry, or Bloodthorn Mercenary, actually, which means I'd definitely do this play.
For the War Chief!
Or Corcoran Elite number 2.
Wow. Yeah, there were actually many outs there. Wow. Yeah. RDU taking the win. It looked like Casie was just about going to be able to defend, but that one was close from both players. I think both players actually did very well to put each other in very awkward spots. It just turned out that RDU holding that Inner Rage to help with this Corcoran actually opened up the battle rage, which gave him that play. So that was actually a very tricky and very close game, Sol, even though it might have looked a little bit straightforward in terms of RDU went face until he killed his opponent.
Yeah, curious about a couple of lines. I'm not going to sit here and try and resolve the maths in terms of like what playing the ice barrier does there instead of freezing the face for Casie if you take the other line with the polymorph instead. But yeah, definitely a couple of points where Casie and myself diverged. So interested to look at those in more detail. But yeah, I think RDU played it pretty smoothly. I don't have too many questions about what he was doing from his side. So in terms of a first showing from RDU, pretty on point, I would say.
Yep, and let's chalk up another win for the Warrior that, again, we just will probably mention at the end of the day and maybe going into next week, that the Warrior gets left open, the Warrior wins a game of Hearthstone. That seems to be the story of this weekend. So RDU taking a win with that Warrior going 1-0 versus Casie. We're going to go to a quick break while we set up game number 2. So stay tuned. We have some more Hearthstone coming right up. Casie versus RDU is going to continue right now. RDU taking a win with his Warrior over the Mage, looking pretty strong, but as to be expected from Warrior right now. Casie on the back foot, but has plenty of opportunity and time to take this series back from RDU, who only has Rogue and Mage to win with, whereas Casie has the full suite of the same classes.
Yeah, and he does still have that Rogue, though. That is also the big talking point, but of course both players do. But actually, I think today, based on the start that we've had, Rogue's done okay, more than okay, in fact. It's been pretty clean in the matches that it's won so far. Calento picking up a fairly easy win, and I believe there was a pretty fast win for Tice as well in that series. I think he kicked things off with a Rogue win. So the Rogues have actually been getting the job done today, contrary to what we've seen from day 1 and 2.
Yeah, and I feel like we are seeing a ton of Mages today, and that might end up being the question mark of the day, at least, to see if these Mages can get over the hump, because all the other lineups are seemingly running very, very similar things, right? Either Demon Hunter or Warrior gets banned, often the Demon Hunter if the Mage is there, and then the Rogue is just an ongoing question. So yeah, we'll just see what these lineups do this weekend as we are nearing the end of the day. But also for me, I'm excited to see what the evolution of that looks like next week. So I do think there's a lot of work to do and a lot of change to make to a lot of these lineups for these players based on what we've seen today and the previous 2 days.
Yeah, sure. Things are certainly going to evolve rather quickly, but it looks like we are going to get the answer to who's going to pick up the first Rogue win in this series, at least, because RDU now has to take on the Rogue God himself in Casie.
I thought you were going to say, as you led into that, yeah, we're going to work out who's going to get the first Rogue win, because, and only one of them would have queued it, and you're like, because RDU's going to take it. And it's like, no, because someone has to, because it's a mirror.
You thought I was just leaking the script in advance there?
I know, yeah.
I know better than that.
Those players are fairly similar opening hand as well. Pretty funny.
And they both pick up a 2-drop reborn off the Pharaoh Cat as well.
Bit of a strange mirror match, honestly. I feel like this mirror match goes the most different from other matchups, if that even makes sense as a sentence. In that the Rogue is played in such a unique fashion when you are against the same thing. You kind of have that weird 3/4 of the way through the game is when it all really kicks off, all in one go. That's when you really just fight for the board extremely heavily. I don't think it's you're really fending off too much aggro. I don't think you're really expecting it to go into late game value plays. It's very much just that huge brawl towards the mid to late game transition.
Yeah. Casie already going to get the tempo rolling here. Does not want to deal with any of this reborn nonsense. He's going to try and seize the board as efficiently as he can. Put RDU in the secret vortex.
It's the first time ever a blackjack stunner stuns a blackjack stunner. And then this game could get really weird. I don't think we've seen a self-stun, have we? Yep.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
It's a shame. Is he actually gonna...
There's no way.
To be fair, RDU does have a dirty tricks, which means it's not like this secret is throwing away the activation for his blackjack stunner. He does have a separate moment. It's always active as and when he demands. It does feel weird the early game on these mirrors, mainly because each player is fighting for the board and you know, using the removal on the minions, but all the minions are very wimpy, so it kind of looks like a waste of time sometimes. In that it's like, okay, I'll backstab this 1, 2, and yeah, I'll trade with this like 2, 3. It doesn't look very impactful, but the second you don't do it and your opponent does, you do actually start to take a lot of damage.
So many options.
The problem was you can you can leave up 1 or 2 small minions, but as soon as 1 or 2 small minions turn into 3 or 4 small minions, it's suddenly a board state that Rogue just has like 0 cards in their deck that it deals with, right? Like apart from already being Galakron and using Kronks to blow it all away, you just can't let the board state snowball. You see both players really paying attention to that. Casie just even Blackjack stunning a 2-drop just to make sure that the board state doesn't snowball.
Yeah, and look how mirrored this board really is. It is uncanny, isn't it? That the game so far has been so similar in terms of the cards that the players have actually played.
I will act as your scapegoat.
Shield is a really nice pickup for RDU here, though. First bit of chunk actually coming into the game now.
Yeah, combined with the fact that the poison was not traded off for Casie, which means RDU gets a good trade with his poison minion, and also, most importantly, can trade away Casie's. So this Shield of Galakron is so much safer. As you said, first chunky minion to hit the board. And honestly, looking at quality of hand, there is, I guess, once we hit that late game, turn 6 onwards, there's a world of difference here. RDU has a whole lot of bits of stuff. Casie just has the cards. Galakron, Kronks, Flick, Ice Baron, and a Lackey. It's all there.
On wings of evil.
I talk about the merits of Deathwing, right?
Yeah. I just thought I'd just say it for the fun of it there. I think the Dragon Ball is a good pick, though. It's RDU doesn't have access to all this mid to late game options, then just having just a solid minion to play out sometimes is good enough.
Agreed. Seemed like a good one. Ah, it's a Doomsayer. Not a particularly bad Doomsayer. There's a decent chance Casie just decides, yeah, right, not really worth throwing 7 points of damage into this thing, and then RDU just has full development next turn and drop his Dragon Maul. It's a pretty slow card.
Ever consider Shadow Step in this Draconic Lackey?
For what purpose?
Purely to just generate maybe some more late game if his next couple of draws aren't great. I guess the Dirty Tricks negates some of that to a certain extent, because it is likely he's going to be drawing some more cards soon. I was just thinking of a value thing, right? He does have Kronks and the Dragon, but I'm not sure how invoked he is, honestly.
I don't like it. I feel like Shadow Step's just too good of a card. Edwin Van Cleef comes into the hand to illustrate some of the possibilities immediately, but he also has Blackjack Stunner, which is a far better Shadow Step target, I think. He has Kronks, which finds Galakron, it's a far better Shadow Step target. I do want to talk about Casey's turn, though, because that was actually kind of cool. That RDU chose to leave the Lackey up, and then Casie went, all right, screw it, throw a 5/5 into it, sacrifice that, I just want to get my wand active. And then instead of just going face, which would have been the instinct, he also just shipped into the 1/1 on board to test for Bamboozle on the secret, which would have obviously just neutralized the Bamboozle in that situation. It still would have died to the Doomsayer, apart from any kind of Death Rattle or Reborn minion that would come out.
They're really getting the most out of, honestly, a bit of a strange turn for him to deal with, because it's just, oh, a Doomsayer on a pretty empty board. So, yeah, very, very good turn overall. He did end up drawing 2 0 costs with his wand, which is a little bit frustrating for him, but he did get Hanar for 0, which is nice. But also ended up with a Waxadread at the end of that turn, which, again, in the mirror, if you can just have the time to play it, which I think is the biggest factor when it's not just summoned from something. If you have the time to actually drop it down, it does become a bit of a nightmare, as it is just that reoccurring threat.
It does. It is potential Blackjack Stunner food, though, that's for sure, which RDU is still holding on to at this point.
Dark in the skies.
Wow, 1-card Gala, right off the rip. Always the way, 100% of the time.
Although it looks kind of weird, I actually don't mind this, mainly because he has Kronks Shadow Step in hand, which can really make a big, like, Kronks Shadow Step just ends games quite often, especially in the mirror. So I think I like just saying, well, there's not going to be a claw anytime soon. And although I understand the sheer fact that, yes, 2 cards is twice as good as 1, how much better is it in a realistic form of how the game plays out?
Twice.
This is nice. You were mentioning, what if the Waxadread gets Blackjack Stunner, Nightmare? Well, make sure it dies. The answer to that, and Casie very nicely make sure he can clear it off there with the help of that Goblin Rush Lag.
Yeah, I like it. Casie does now have the potential huge Edwin turn as well, especially if he can find a secret to start popping off with the Shadow Jeweler Hanar. Can potentially throw an Edwin into all of that with the same turn. And obviously, somewhat bad if it ends up being Bamboozle that you pick up to play with your Shadow Jeweler Hanar, but we'll deal with that problem when we get to it.
And now I'm wondering, honestly, and correct me if this is just a silly suggestion, but with Kronks, Shadow Step, the Galacrond, and the Van Cleef, that all just add up to a very good turn, and you get to hold it.
Kronks, Shadow Step, hold it, play Edwin.
And you can play the Praise... sorry, 1 mana off playing the Praise Galacrond, actually, so maybe that actually makes it nowhere near as good.
Yeah, the Edwin's not that big. I assume you would be making an 8/8 in that position with the Kronks. Is that your plan?
Darkness reigns.
Would have been if you could play the Praise, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking of 8/8 Dragon, 8/8 Van Cleef, not really weak to flick, and you hold the Kronks in hand for follow-up. But yes, without... Sorry, I confess I thought it was undead.
Okay. Well, then we just won't even deal with that suggestion then, Raven.
Yeah. Hardy is just going aggro though, and again now it sets up the Kronk shouts at Kronks for just damage from hand one of the times.
Mm-hmm.
Freezing Trap, Ice Barrier, and Paladin Secret.
Nondescript Paladin Secret. Don't read it, just pick it.
Casey's a true gamer.
So he picks Bamboozle, so he's stopping his train on purpose because he already has a Bamboozle, so that's now unplayable. So that means he wants to go with the Edwin line. But he does have a Bamboozle in play. This is kind of the weird thing that I was talking about. He's playing this giant Edwin Van Cleef while having a Bamboozle in play.
Too many cards.
But with no dagger available, it's not the easiest thing in the world for RDU to be able to attack into it from Casey's perspective. Casie doesn't know.
Get a dagger available.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If he plays the Plague of Madness and Dirty Tricks doesn't activate, he's pretty confident it's Bamboozle at that point, right?
Right.
So I think it's actually a pretty good starting point for the turn.
Also, I wonder if he plays... See, he gets the test, then he could actually just flip Van Cleef and then just go face and 2 turns the Kronks, right?
Mm. He's also scared of Noble Sacrifice, of course, I guess, in this position, which is something that I'm not considering.
Yeah, so here, RDU is basically putting Casey in a position where he has to heal or he does die to this Kronk Shadow.
Yep.
Nice getting the Repentance out of the way as well. Casey probably not overly upset by this because obviously he doesn't want this outcome, but in general, nice. In general, I'm just meaning the Repentance and Paladin is normally just a 1-cost pot.
That Death Rattle summon a 7/5 Shadow with stealth.
That's the problem,
That's
isn't
insane. That is bananas. Eye for an eye!
Both of them, the main problem is the fact that the dagger is live. I do wonder if it was MD there, actually.
No, it was... So the reason he did it that way around is because he gets a rebuy on the Hunter Secret to look for Freezing Trap. That's, like, his best out in this position, right? And he did actually end up hitting it as well. But I think it's the right thing to go for in this spot. Because otherwise, that 7/5 it's just ending the game.
Not if you swing with the dagger and then he poisons the 7/5 and kills it.
Sure. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
It's what, as long as he kills the 1/1, it's likely that something like that happens, right? He could even make it even more likely by just trading away on the board.
I'll give you guys a quick recap. We've got Eye for an Eye, we have Bamboozle, we have Ambush, and we have Freezing Trap.
It's also just a basis product to be used to activate a potential freezing trap as well.
My trap.
Yep, love it.
How about a new life? How about a new life?
Yeah, there is still the Bamboozle in play from the Edwin turn. So RDU just making his mind up where he wants to throw this. Ooh, it's kind of a nasty one.
Stealth. Stealth everywhere.
Stealth City out here. Stealth
Ooh,
City.
Should he not swing with the dagger?
That might be the highest value eye for an eye I have ever seen in my life.
No secret. We even set up a blackjack going forward with our shadow step. How do you? I think just that one blackjack, knowing that it's unlikely he gets anything off. He just wants extra minions to either potentially buff with Krunks. Sorry.
I mean, he just has 10. As long as there's no healing, he doesn't need any minions to buff with Kronks.
Yeah, I think he's just covered his bases. He doesn't lose much by playing that right.
Agreed.
If it's just this weird out where there is a heal from somewhere, and the fact he has an extra minion means he gains more damage by double buffing with Krunks instead of double 5 damage. Seems good.
How do you deal with this, though? Casie has to heal with Kronks and then clear the board with other cards. I don't really see that being a remote possibility right now.
Okay, the thing I was thinking of was clear off the 7/7 and then Krunks to clear the board with AoE. I understand that obviously that he is dead to RDU, but I'm thinking from Casey's point, what can he even do to stop this?
Oh, Casie might just not have had enough time to react to the Apexis Smuggler there. It's after you play a secret, discover a spell. So he could have dropped ambush and looked for sap or whatever else maybe could have got him out of this position. From his perspective, of course, we know nothing he did mattered unless he healed.
Oh, and that's
very rare.
7/7.
Very rare to see Casie on the rope, but he got there.
He did, yeah, and RDU, as we mentioned, first time seeing him on stream this season in Grandmasters, going much better than his first 3 weeks, I think. And if he can finish this series up maybe very quickly with a 3-0 sweep of Casie, that must just feel pretty good for him. He's, I think, more frustrated than anyone at his results in the first 3 weeks, knowing that we've seen that he clearly expects more of himself, as many people do. But having just a 3-0 win, match number 1 of his round robin, must be great if he can pull it.
Yeah, and honestly, great to see RDU on stream. I answered your question all the way back in week 1, Raven, about who I was excited to see moving forward, and I said RDU because I didn't know where his level of constructed was at, which was a comment that RDU actually took some objection to, but it's fine. We've thrashed it all out since then. But purely by its literal meaning, I just didn't know where his constructed level was at because we just haven't really seen it recently. And I know that he has the ability to be an extremely strong player. And now that I'm looking at it, I can answer that question and say he looks pretty darn good because he was in a couple of really sticky spots there. In Hanar situations, for example, we've seen multiple players make horrible messes of those situations from both sides up until this point, and RDU seemed to navigate through it pretty smoothly there. So yeah, liking what I'm seeing from RDU right now.
And honestly, that is the big thing for me. Based on, yes, there are some players who make very flashy, crazy high-level plays. That's incredible. But for me, the first level of what you want to see is just strong, solid play, almost no matter the situation. No roping, pressuring you out. No weird, I didn't think about this secret or I misplayed into that secret. None of that. Just play some solid, strong Hearthstone and don't make really any mistakes. And I think so far, that's what we've seen from RDU in just the 2 games we've seen from him. So I think he's more than capable of winning this series here, having only Mage to take a win with out of the 3 potential games that are left.
Yeah, but Mage is, of course, all just a giant pile of question marks, all wrapped up in a pretty bow, but then you unwrap that bow and just spray all the question marks across the room immediately. That is about the best analogy I can come up with on the spot. It wasn't very good. We'll move on. Mage is the one remaining deck in the series, though, for RDU. And honestly, you can see some of the holes in this deck just against the decks that it has to line up against. You can see why it's a fourth choice deck, let's put it that way, because it is quite clearly a fourth choice deck in the players' lineups that have brought it, based on how ubiquitous all the other decks in their lineup are throughout pretty much all the regions. It's just this last deck seems to sometimes be Druid, sometimes be Mage, sometimes be Warlock. And those seem to be the decks that, you can see one or two matchups where they have their holes in them.
Yeah, and this, honestly, as we do get into this game, of course, this is what excites me about week 2, right? Because I believe that there is no longer the question of the 4th deck. There's the question of the 3rd and 4th deck next week, because I think a lot of players will be turned off Rogue, which means, wait, if there's now if you're expecting Warrior, Demon Hunter as a guaranteed 2, which I think is a fair assumption, but you've got 2 slots to fill and not 1, that just blows the game wide open. And I think we're going to see something a little bit nutty next week. But we can talk about that a little bit later. Let's get into this game. Solarian, nice and early for Mr. RDU.
Livewire Lance off the top, giving Casie the choice of weapons. I think he makes the correct choice here, going for Lackey value over the Pirate draws. I don't think he's in any emergency need of a risky skipper turn anytime soon. So I think giving himself some lackeys for flexibility in the coming turns is probably more beneficial.
Yep. Get behind that. But the key again, I feel like I say this every single Mage game, and it scares me that I feel like I'm doing this consistently, because it's just how strong that might be. But Banner Saber seems to be there every time.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I look at it and go, wow, this card is really good in this deck.
Plot twist?
Yeah, I was looking at plot twist. I was like, is it ever? But it can't be, right? Not with what he has in hand.
It's kind of cute, though. The fact that you just put a bunch of lackeys in your hand and then just shuffle them back in and exchange them for real cards. It wasn't good, but it was cute, and that makes it worth talking about.
See, Magic actually going to do some work.
Is an afterthought.
Yeah, not going to get it outcasted, though, which is kind of a bummer.
A bit of a smile for Haradu there, just like, okay, I did wonder what was going on, the fact that that Lackey was even played into this Doomsayer.
Mm-hmm.
Small note as well, the fact that this Doomsayer is going to stick around means that makes it that little bit easier to proc a Blood Boil Brute, because there's just going to be a minion that lives for a very long time, probably injured.
It also, Raven, enables the play known as the Radu. Do you know the Radu?
I don't know. Tell me.
It's Zephyrus, inner fire your own silenced Doomsayer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Why is this the Radu?
Because he busted it out. It was pretty early days of Zephyrus in Grandmasters, and he just busted it out at a point where just no one had thought of that being a possibility,
okay.
and everyone just lost their mind. It was great. It's like how the Gallon is coin hero power as Druid against Rogue, so that you can spellstone their hench clan thug.
Observe and reflect.
We do this over here in Europe. We just name plays after players. This is the thing.
I can't wait till I get the Raven coin and realise you've not counted mana properly and pass.
The Daruk coin Calicos.
Did wonder if there was ever a Dragoncaster rolling fireball in there.
Someone's gotta lead the charge.
Talk about priorities. These targets are not really the ones you too bothered about killing off.
Someone's gotta lead the charge.
Does that have damage though? And it is a new thing that these players have to consider is early push damage is scary now versus Warrior because they have Grom, which is just 12 sometimes, or at least 12 pretty often. So even though this is only 4 damage on board, you do have to fear it. If you're already 21, you go down to mid-teens. you're nearly dead on turn 8 at that point. It's quite scary.
I must choose.
And the rolling fireball would have done 6 damage, was it? So, in terms of if you're just going, it deals 8, it dealt 6 health on board, it almost achieves its goal.
Yeah, I was actually looking at rolling fireball that turn. I just don't think I would have spent my dragon caster on it if that's what I was going to do. I would have just played the rolling fireball, but it was something that I was looking at there as well.
Observe and
share consideration for Nova and start using these Ray of Frost. I think the time is running out here for Radu that he could just go Twilight Drake Ping, whatever, it's fine. They're only small minions because there's a lot of them. It's stacking up quick.
If he starts on the right with the rolling fireball, because of the way the minions are positioned, he does take a large amount of damage off the board before it stops. The 8 health stops at the Blood Cell Raider while killing it, so it would only leave 3 damage on board at that point.
What a show!
Now he's going to go Frost Nova instead.
This does actually lock out Risky Skipper
Sure.
because there's only one spot on
true.
the board and then you can't follow it up. So this a lot of the time is a Casie pass turn.
I've got more left
Yeah.
in me.
It's also
Which is fair.
actually just too many cards to battle rage.
Yeah. Ooh. The breath could unlock the game. That's
The
gonna be
Dragon
something-
Caster's gone though.
It is, but even if there's just like a Blizzard is castable, another Nova would help a lot because then it really is a pass turn for Casie.
Mm-hmm.
None of those cards actually happened, although Ice Barrier and Ray of Frosts this turn, potentially. I do feel that Radu is suffering with this rolling fireball in hand now, and it might get to the point where it's never going to be enough. Maybe that one turn he had to do a pretty mediocre, if not meager, rolling fireball might have just been correct. Even though the Dragon Caster didn't look mind-blowing with the Frost Nova, it does obviously have the upside of being able to attack this turn, which means it can heal off damage.
Show you who's boss! Rudy, go get him!
Loads of draws here, not only for Inner Rage, but also bear in mind, depending on the health here, Casie does have Risky Skipper Grom for just turn 9 to activate it just for 10 damage. Just does not look like without a box this game is going to get anywhere, and Radu can't cast box anymore because he's not at 10 mana and he doesn't have the Dragon Caster. Ice Barrier, Ray, I guess.
Must be a way.
Thanks. I hate it.
He just needs to get to Reno, right? He just needs to coin Reno.
Yep.
I think that's basically,
Just has to be the play.
as frustrating as it is, that is just the plan. So what's the damage here? Grom has 12 in him. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And then there's the bomb potential. I think he could hold
Correct.
off and just go Weapon Corkron.
Yeah, I mean, can he put him to 7 this turn?
Wait, Weapon
'Cause then-
Corkron. Oh.
I can read.
So if he does it this way, so he pushes extra damage, puts him down to 7. Reno goes back up to 12. There's no more
He has
damage from
12.
bombs. Does he have 12? He has 12. Yeah. Okay.
Corkron, Inner Rage, and Bloodsworn Mercenary will make 12. And I wonder if this Grom ever gives a read to Radu. I mean, for one, Casey's drawn most of his deck. So Radu probably has to at least consider Corkron here,
Must
and
be a
at
way.
least a part of the damage. But I wonder whether the Grom being used now and putting Radu 2-7 instead of like the Grom being saved for the finisher ever, makes Radu consider a different play here.
I think the only different play to consider is Solarian.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think Dragon Queen Alexstrasza ever does enough to get you there if you're saying to your opponent, okay, you kill me this turn. The Solarian Prime only has to go something to deal with the board plus Ice Barrier or plus Mirror Image is maybe sometimes good enough as well, I guess. So I think this has a better chance. Yep.
Almost did it.
Almost did it, but there's the risky skipper clear that can come through as well.
And also the bomb to face opened up some problems, right? Because suddenly there's only one Corcoran needs to hit face.
Yep. It was a good try, and I think it was the right try as well. I think he was correct not to just Reno, because he's giving respect over to Casie that was a 2-turn lethal setup, as you were describing. And then I think out of the other options, the Solarian Prime was more likely, as far as I'm concerned, to solve that problem for you than Dragon Queen Alexstrasza.
Yeah, I think really good recognition there from RDU, just knowing that the Reno was likely to get him killed. Casie, on the other hand, though, is going to get a win. Isn't going to be 3-0'd. Takes a win with his warrior. Again, though, good setup from Casie there. There was a few ways he could have gone about that game in terms of just especially the last few turns. But just saying, okay, the Grom actually puts him at that health total is the magic number based on what he can follow up with. So great from Casie, great from RDU. And the series is going to continue. RDU is going to be locking in his Mage once again, of course. Casie, on the other hand, has his Mage or his Rogue. And honestly, Sol, I'm just fearful of the if and when we get to the Mage Mirror, because those games are weird.
Weird indeed. But Casie has to take this one step at a time. He'll be happy that there's even the chance of a Mage Mirror in his future now that he's picked up that win with the Warrior. And we've seen really two very one-sided looking Warrior versus Mage games. The Mage did not look particularly in it in either of them, although I will contest that Casie was partly the victim of his own demise as it came to the Warrior on the other side in that matchup against RDU. But he does have the opportunity now. He has clap back with his Warrior. He now has the Rogue and Mage left to win with, as you say.
Yeah, and even though we saw even earlier we saw Rogue, we saw Warrior beat up Mage very quickly. Was it the Pavel match where Pavel just
Zim?
died?
Yeah, Zim versus Pavel just curved into
died.
Grom and killed him on turn 8. Yeah.
It was incredible, but yeah, it does sound like the players are locking in for another game. Just a reminder, if you just tuned in recently, this is match 3 of 5 of the day. This is going to be Europe Grandmasters, and we are going to be following up to finalize with Americas this week. And that's going to be a week of round robin done, but it all adds up across the next 4 weeks to decide who is going to make playoffs, who is going to be relegated, and who is going to be in the question mark stage for that week as well, for the one relegation spot that does actually end up being played out. But this game, Mage again, of course, for Radu, and Casie going through his room.
Ooh, very slow-looking start from Casey's side here. Not exactly what he's looking for. Does drop the dirty tricks though. Mage on coin means that he will probably get value out of that sooner rather than later, and that should go some way to fixing his issues here.
Radu misplaying, not the ping to his own face to stop this happening, but
Oh, it hurts.
Interestingly enough, RDU coining out one of these 4-drops looks good to me, but it will prot the secret, giving Casie more resources to work with in the follow-up, so I wonder if that's ever in consideration. I think if I was in Radu's seat here, I would just say, well, whatever, I'll just get a full drop.
I think if you're doing it, it's always Mana Saber, right? Because Water Elemental is actively bad against 2 of the secrets. It's 2 cards for dirty tricks, and it's also just, oh great, I did nothing that turn if it's ambush, right? Because they just have the poison minion to trade with it. Whereas at least Mana Saber, you deny the trade.
Well, the good point as well is you would coin first, so you'd see if it was dirty tricks anyway, so you get narrows down the odds, right? And
that's fair.
Instead, you see Doomsay, if it goes down, he would have propped the ambush, but okay, if the ambush just hits the Doomsay, then whatever. Now Casie doing the Casie, which is kind of buffing a Doomsayer, but not quite to the extent with an Inner Fire.
Nice.
Is that a good one? Can I join in with the in-jokes now?
You're getting the hang of it. I don't think that one's going to catch on, but
Okay,
you're
worth a
definitely
try.
on the right track.
Okay, I'm okay with that. Better luck next time. I've got 4 weeks.
Wings of evil.
Weird choice. Yeah, honestly. Or choices now for Casie. I'm not even sure what I would like versus
We are
Mage.
friends
I
now.
guess the Brightwing is just the most playable right now, which says, okay, well, we'll just keep going. But none of those really felt did they?
Dragonbane is a pretty sick final outcome, though, out of all of that shenanigan. I'll take that any day.
Just gonna get the news on what the secret is after this Arcane Breath, and I wonder if that's just a go again. Arcane Breath just feels like a card I wouldn't ever be bothered, like I'd ever be upset about it being offered.
Seems
We're
like
gonna be
RDU
fun.
agrees. There goes the dirty tricks. Casie
I
now
said a follow-up
finally
seems
has
good.
something proactive to do with the evil miscreant.
I will act as your scapegoat.
You can make one really high health with all these Titanic. Make rolling Fireball a little bit more awkward at least.
I was going to say earlier, his hand really didn't do anything except make like a 1/8 blackjack stunner, which didn't really seem like the best thing in the world. Plays nicely around rolling fireball, though, at least.
There must
I
be
wonder
a
if it's
way.
ever worth it anyway. I don't know. Is that too silly?
No.
Because
I don't think
how
it's
often
too
are you
silly.
expecting rolling Fireball to do great versus Rogue? Like, when? You know? I don't think the Rogue board ever gets to a point where rolling Fireball is really clutch, whereas just killing a 4/7 seems like a reasonable usage of 5 mana. Was he just going in? Okay.
Yeah, I like this more. I think your suggestion is reasonable, but I think this is probably higher output on average. But I take your point about rolling fireball. Like, generally, if you imagine like an unbuffed Shield of Galacrond here, that's about the board that a rolling fireball deals
Right.
with on average in the rogue matchup, I'd say.
There must be a
Not the best outcomes from Tortolan, is it?
No.
You are too late. His return is nigh.
The ever-present Shadow Step on the Krunks. Means that basically, for the rest of the game, Shadow has to be a little bit afraid. Not only is Krunks just powerful post Galacrond, of course, but the fact that it's 4 mana makes it able to just unlock so many more turns than it would normally be able to.
Oh, the Arcane Breath and the Reno is a full clear now.
Yep, that'll do it. He gets to push 5.
He does indeed. But Casie does have fully invoked Gallop coming back the other way.
How do you like Counterspell in this matchup now with all the secrets and stuff?
Not really something that I have a whole bunch of experience with, to be honest. My instinct would be that I don't like it, but it's definitely not something that I've played with too much. I was leaning Frostbolt there, personally, just because you know that there's Big Claw in the future coming for you, right? You know Galacrond is drawn and you know it's fully invoked. So there's 5/2 Claw coming at you pretty soon.
Pretty soon is now.
I will act as your scapegoat.
Not the craziest Galacron draws, but honestly, just digging to the other Shadow Step is just nice for Casie, I think. And he has Krunk, Shadow Step, Krunks again.
Darkness wanes.
Well,
Is it time?
do you want to say it or should I?
I mean, speaking honestly, there is just rolling fireball counterspell this turn.
There is, yeah.
He gets to push 9.
And reflect.
I'd feel a lot better about rolling Fireball Frostbolt this turn. Just saying. Yeah, you're not wrong. Yep, strictly worse.
Yeah, and if I know Hearthstone rules,
Yep.
and what all the streamers say, spend your mana.
Yep, can't argue with that. Great
Made
point.
me Ray of Frost a cat. Still, though, it's got to be scary for IDU here, knowing that Casie just has a million resources and half of them cost 0, it feels like at this point.
Yeah.
So IDU, although it has some backup with this counterspell with the board, Casie is fully equipped.
Now this Dragon Bait. Whoa! Finally coming in clutch. And that's just lethal. And it's just lethal setup for the following turn now.
Well, you want to say? And how do he knows, right? Or okay, he doesn't know.
He knows there's one
there is a
Kronks.
cheap Kronks in the deck, and I don't know. I don't think it's unlikely he would die from 10 health with that many cards drawn from Casie.
There must be a way.
There is a
So
way, Adgar.
He knows the Kronks is there, so he's dead to Shadow Step. He is dead to Eviscerate if Casie runs it. Let's take a quick look. He does not. Okay, well that changes things.
Fellow seeker of truth.
Greetings, fellow secret of truth. Here is a box.
All things considered, it does seem like a pretty decent box turn. Okay.
Now that's a really...
Okay. That's nothing. Still nothing.
The whole thing was kind of nothing, right?
Okay, cool. He died.
Oh, yeah. He props to the counterspell last turn, right? That's Vaporize.
Yeah, and he can, even if it was,
Yeah,
he can play
yeah,
around it,
just
as he just did.
Yep, the nature of Kronks being already reduced means that with the Shadow Step number 2, he can be safe and play around an emergency counterspell anyway. RDU, a bit of a sigh. But honestly, his box just did not do enough there. There needed to be something in terms of heal or some way to block out this Kronks turn. Casie evens up the series 2-2, and RDU for me in that game felt like he just never got off the back foot there. Even though he had a bit of a board, it just felt like Casie at one point was pressure board, and then at another point just ended up just drawing his deck almost, getting that 4 Evoke Galakron off, which was huge.
Yeah, and even though Casie had a really slow start as well, he really just did nothing for the first few turns. It's not like he was pressuring from an early point. His pressure did come in kind of that mid-game spike that you were talking about. But there's a couple of key turns there, I think, like, you know, dumping all of his invokes onto the Doomsayer, for example. The Casie, as you were saying, did allow him to be able to turbo that Galakron as fast as possible. And the Kronks, Shadow Step Kronks play is actually super smart because he felt like he had to go fast in that position. So he both drew his Galakron and then retained his Kronks in hand for the burst damage finisher, which is what ended up sealing the game for him. So yeah, nicely done. Obviously RDU had to rip the box at the end, but I think that's the type of box when you specifically need one thing to happen, that's when it's going to let you down, right? Like your good boxes are like, okay, I don't have a solution to this problem. Box, work it out. I'm sure there's a variety of things that you can do. Just go and work it out. But in that case, RDU needed exactly healing, which is sometimes just a little bit too much to ask.
Yeah, or it's even on the other end of the scale where it's a relatively slow, empty game and you just rip a box on 6 because, and like things would have to go terribly wrong for it to really put you behind. But yeah, let's get into it then. Speaking of boxes, the players have just been handed 2 more. So we're about to go into the Mage. I believe. I mean, is there even that many differences right now in the way mages are built? Okay, I will say Casie is running a deep freeze. Yeah, it's just one deep freeze, one power creation, which obviously is a Highlander deck. But I just meant they're running both. But yeah, I feel like the mage list is pretty secure right now.
Yeah, agreed. There's one or two flex spots with like water elementals sometimes making their way
Like
into people's decks.
Flame Ward and Barrier versus just Barrier is one small
Yeah.
change we see as well.
Imprisoned Observer, not everyone is on the Imprisoned Observer hype train yet, I don't think, even though I do believe personally it's a very strong card.
And it almost as if the players have done this a million times. They are playing lightning fast, right? There's a bit of a shock to the system watching these two play.
It's all kind of trash, isn't it?
Kills an elemental.
Yeah, it's fair.
Easy way to look at it, although not the best secret in the world. If he'd picked a card and just dealt 4 to the elemental, you're probably okay with it. Now Coin Reno is available for Casie, which means he can just stop this mana saver getting value.
I think based on how important we've seen, how pivotal we've seen Mana Saber being in so many Mage matchups up until this point, that is probably a good idea. RDU does now have the opportunity to just counter Reno, though.
Yeah, and it does come with a consequence as well, right? Because Casey's utilized his coin and has not ramped yet, unlike RDU, who did with Zephyrus early on, which means Casey's follow-up is actually quite bad. If anything, I imagine he wants this or expects this region to live. He can then Conjurer's Calling it and do something.
And there's the Heartbreaker. He does not get to have his Reno live, which means he has no play this turn whatsoever. Now, the real salt in the wound would be the Conjurer's Calling off the top for RDU. Sorry, the way RDU attacked with that Reno and then his mouse seemed to pick up Alex, it's like he thought it was still a mana saver and he was going to be able to play the 9-drop. It's just kind of weird looking.
Winds of the south, come to my aid!
Looks like it's going to have to be a rolling fireball response here, but the tempo of the game is very much being flipped on its head here.
Oh, I like it. If you just go Alex face, go, and just make him trade the Zephyrus. The Seabat, sorry.
Must be a way.
I bring life.
Okay.
What's the answer with 8 mana, right? This is the question. Freeze, obviously, but there's still an 8/8 on the board. Okay, well,
That's a pretty good one. Yep. Just take a moment, Casie. Simplify the board. Make sure you tell Zephyrus what you want. There you go. Nice!
Your wish is my suggestion.
Play perfectly, get rewarded.
Oh. That is called a very good turn there for Casie. Refreshed his Seamat anyway as a 6/6, and it just gets an Antonidas, has the cheap spell to combo it with Zephyrus, and RDU only has removal. At least he can roll in Fireball the Antonidas. It's not great, but it's something.
Yeah,
if this
problem with
Antonidas
that
lives...
plan- Okay, if he goes Rolling Fireball Ice Barrier, he might be okay. Or if he goes Rolling Fireball with Ray of Frosts, he might be okay. Or all of the above. But the problem with just Rolling Fireball even is that he'll get Alexed in the face by Casie, and then 9 will get pushed, and then the Fireball in hand is lethal the next turn anyway. See, I think this is very responsible just to take more of that damage off the board here. In fact, all of said damage.
Well, you see what that cost Radu, right? That basically most of his resources, he's got a few pieces of removal, and some stall left. But look at Radu's face, so annoyed, and then he draws the box. He's like, "Okay, game on."
Pretty good start. Time to find out if Radu's arms are long enough to box with God.
The misdirection.
It was quite a lot of nothing. Oh!
That is a big deal. He just did 8 to himself. That puts him on 6. I'm just saying numbers.
12.
Casie, the only responsible thing is to respond with your own box.
Ready for a show?
Oh no! This is my worst nightmare, Raven.
Look at Radu's face.
It's a counter spell. King Crush.
What is going on? I've got nothing. Casting long gone out the window. He also has a 1-mana fireball.
Why does? Oh, of course, yeah, because it's he's still Winsinger, right? Yeah.
Frostbolt, there's 3. Still does not like enough. If he got fireball, that would have just been game. Does he go for the Malicos's missile 6 to face?
The way this game is going, that is 100% likely to all go face for 6.
Lethal. It's just lethal. He could play Solarian with it. Wait, hang on. How much spell damage is Solarian?
Just 1.
Okay, so he's 1 off, right?
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought it was 2 for a second. I was like, wait a minute.
He's gonna Frost Nova?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's just a 1-mana power of creation. Are we flying? No.
Cartoon Defender!
I thought we got rid of Pocket Galaxy, but now we have the other Galaxy, which is spells for 1 mana instead.
I wonder.
You're in my house.
What's he supposed to do, Saul? Frost Nova stops the Oh, well, the Slime's not going to be trade and drawn anyway, unlikely, so... Slime. What if it gets drawn now, though?
It's a Caligos.
Every day of the week. Worst case, you can just Blizzard, and it still doesn't kill off the Kartok.
Pyros are out, Fireballs are out.
Crossbolts
Like you
are
said,
out.
if he whiffs, then it's just a Blizzard.
Hex's Blast.
Hex's Blast.
That'll do it!
Whoo! Radu!
What a game of Hearthstone to end this series on. Absolutely incredible. Sigh of relief there from RDU, because not only was he leading this series 2-0, but Casie fought back to make it 2-2, and then this game was just absolutely mind-bending to end the series on. Wow.
You don't need any more of us. Just stay on Radu's face right there for a few more seconds. That says everything that we need to cover in this post-match wrap-up. Mage. That's about it.
That's the line. Yeah, so because I do have to do my job. Congratulations to Radu.
Joke's on you, idiot.
I do feel bad for Casie because of the way that the end of that game, but honestly, they both chose to bring Mage to a certain extent. This is what you get, right? This is literally what the deck tries to do in a fairly consistent fashion. So honestly, you can't feel too bad if someone else has brought Mage also. But yeah, Radu on his first appearance on stream for Grandmasters, taking a win. He's got to be feeling pretty happy about that. He was only on a 1-match weekend, which means he was 100% win for the weekend for number 1. Casie, unfortunately, going to be 0-2 as his start for the group phase. So going to feel pretty rough for him right now.
Yeah, for sure it will. And it is a heartbreaker. And of course, you don't want to see anyone going down 0-2, especially anyone in Division B. Anyone that goes off to that 0-2 start is immediately going to probably be in a pretty bad headspace moving forward, you know, staring down that prospect of relegation. So that is a super big deal for both of these players. I imagine the result of that series, even though we're so early, just for the the context of the rest of Casey's season and for Radu to get off to a very strong start there. And again, I want to reiterate that maybe a couple of question marks here and there, but the same amount that I have with just about any player that's playing on stream so far. So in terms of my challenge at the end of week 1 of come on Radu, let's see where you're at with Constructed. Yeah, good job, passed with flying colours.
Yeah, looking pretty solid throughout that series, and we'll see him more next week, of course, when he'll be playing more than one match. But now that we are just going to go to a break, just a reminder though, we do have 2 more matches left in the European region. We have Boston versus Viper, and we have Huntrace versus Felkane as well coming up after this break. So we'll be back just a short while. Get ready for match number 4.